So, what if faith wasn't just something you believed in, but something that could actually reshape you from the inside out? Well, today, we're going to crack open a nearly 400-year-old guide by a writer named Isaac Ambrose, who created a manual for doing exactly that. Let's dive into his incredible step-by-step guide for a faith that truly transforms.
Right off the bat, Ambrose makes this huge claim. But when he says study, he doesn't mean, memorizing facts for a test. He's arguing that really, truly understanding Jesus isn't just another topic you can master. It is the topic. It's the one that, if you get it, changes absolutely everything else.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? Ambrose's whole guide is about making that jump, moving past the historical facts and figures to a deep, personal application that changes how you think, how you feel, and how you live. It's all about that leap. So how does he say we do it?
Well, that brings us to his first major point, the ultimate study. This is all about getting from just head knowledge to actual experience. Ambrose tackles this head-on, drawing this massive line in the sand between knowing about something and truly experiencing it for yourself.
Okay, so look at how Ambrose splits knowledge into these two different types. On one side, you've got notional knowledge. He calls this just the bare history of things, the story, the facts. But he says it's totally unprofitable. On the other side is saving knowledge. And this is about eyeing the meaning for thyself. It's taking that history and asking, okay, but what does this mean for me? And that, he says, is the only kind of knowledge that leads to real change.
So how do we get there? If we're meant to move from just notional facts to that real, saving knowledge, where do we even begin? Well, Ambrose gives us a two-step process. First, we have to know the core theological mystery, and second, we have to consider what it means for us personally.
First up, Ambrose looks at the human side of this mystery. And his point is actually pretty straightforward. For Christ's sacrifice to count for humanity, he had to be fully human, right? He had to be one of us, made of the same stuff, so that he could genuinely stand in our place.
But, just being human wasn't enough. For that sacrifice to actually have the power to overcome sin and death, Ambrose argues that Christ also had to be divine. His divine nature is what gave his death infinite value, making it powerful enough to save everyone. So this two-part reality, fully God and fully man, that's a core idea called the hypostatical union. And for Ambrose, this isn't some dusty old doctrine. It's the key that unlocks absolutely everything else.
So once you've got that intellectual framework that Christ is both human and divine, Ambrose says the whole journey moves inward. This is what he calls the soul's inner journey. It stops being about just what you know, and it becomes all about how your heart and your soul move from just kind of wanting something to a firm, personal belief. He breaks this inner journey down into three really distinct movements. It all kicks off with desire, that first spark where your soul, as he puts it, darts itself towards the absent good. Then that grows into hope, where you start to find actual reasons to believe this good news could really apply to you. And finally, that leads you to the step of belief, which he says is all about confronting and overcoming the biggest obstacles inside yourself.
So what's holding us back? Ambrose identifies three huge internal roadblocks. First, there's that crushing feeling of our own unworthiness. Second, this deep fear of a perfect, divine justice. And third, just the sense that the gap between a flawed human being and a perfect God is way too big to cross. It feels impossible.
But this is where it gets really amazing. Ambrose argues that the incarnation is the perfect, direct answer to every single one of those fears. You feel unworthy? Well, he says God honored human nature by taking it on himself. You're afraid of justice? God himself became the satisfaction for that justice. You feel like there's no bridge? God built the perfect one, someone who is both fully human and fully divine.
All right, so let's say you've cleared those hurdles. You finally arrived at belief. Is that it? Is the journey over? For Ambrose, not even close. That's actually just the beginning, and that brings us to what he calls the fruits of faith. He says true belief isn't some final destination. It's more like a seed that now has to grow into something.
And here are the primary fruits, he says, grow from that seed of faith. The biggest ones are love and joy, and he says those then just naturally bubble up and pour out as prayer and praise. Now, the crucial thing here is that these aren't chores you have to do to prove you have faith. He says they are the spontaneous, natural results of a heart that's already been changed. Diving into that first fruit, love, Ambrose makes this incredible point. He says the deepest expression of God's love wasn't just pardoning humanity from a distance. The greater act of love was closing that distance completely by taking on our nature and becoming one of us.
And what about the joy? Where does that come from? Ambrose says it comes from how God chose to show up. He didn't come with terrifying power, all thunder and lightning, but instead in the quiet, familiar, approachable form of a human being. It's an invitation, not a threat.
And all of this, the knowing, the considering, the believing, the feeling, it all leads us to the final and most important part of Ambrose's guide. Everything so far has been aimed at one single ultimate goal, becoming a new self, total personal transformation.
He calls this goal conformity, and this table just lays it out so clearly. The idea is that Christ's life becomes the blueprint for our own spiritual life. Just as he was conceived by the Spirit, the goal is for Christ to be spiritually conceived in us. As he's the Son of God by nature, we become children of God through grace. You see the pattern? His reality is meant to become our reality. And that really is the bottom line. For Isaac Ambrose, the whole point of studying Jesus was never about just collecting more information. The entire purpose of this deep, meditative journey is to be remade in his image, to conform, to be transformed, to become.
You know, this guide from nearly 400 years ago is all about the power of an idea to completely change a person. So it kind of leaves us with a question for ourselves. What idea, whether it's ancient or brand new, has ever changed not just what you think, but the very person you are?